Heart health is important, like really important. A long life requires treating your ticker right. But don't worry, your heart is a tough organ. Besides this muscle needing oxygen-rich blood to do its job, I believe there are 5 key nutrients the heart needs on an everyday basis. Magnesium, B vitamins to include folate, vitamin K, omega-3 fatty acids, and CoQ10. It's the last two, omega-3 and CoQ10, which we'll focus a little on today. To find out how these two nutrients support heart health, I got to sit down with nutritionist Kira Barret, who holds a degree in Human Nutrition and Dietetics and is the national educator for Nordic Naturals, the #1 selling fish oil in our country. Welcome to the show, Kira.
Hey, Bryan, thank you so much for having me. I'm really excited to be here.
Well, I'm glad to have you here today because, I needed someone to talk to about stress and how it impacts our heart health. Because, so many people, we know what stress is, right? We know when we're driving down the road and we get road rage, that creates a lot of stress in our body. But what I don't think we always learn about is what is it really doing on the chemistry side of things? What are we depleting in our body, or what do we need more of to try to help combat those effects of stress? So why don't we start with how really stress impacts our heart health?
Oh, really good question. And you're so right. As people living in this modern world, we are no strangers to stress. What's interesting about stress is it's really driven by two parts of the body, the brain, of course, and the adrenal glands, which are going to release hormones. So hormones are, of course,
cortisol.
chemical. Yep, good old cortisol.
Yes.
Hormones are our chemical messengers, which literally communicate with the body and our cells of how to respond to any given stimulus in the environment. So if we encounter a stressor that is perceived first in the brain by our amygdala gland, which is going to communicate with the hypothalamus that there is a threat, that we are for some reason in danger. And that part of the brain is going to send a message through the central nervous system to our adrenal glands to release adrenaline. We all know what it feels like to have adrenaline rushing through the body. We are no strangers to adrenaline. It's that really quick, just rush of, oh my gosh, I have to do something quick. That sympathetic nervous system turns on. You know that you have to fight or flight or flee. And so what's going to happen with that rush of adrenaline, whether it's a perceived threat or a real threat, is our heart rate is going to increase because the body knows that we have to be able to run. Our blood pressure is going to increase. Our blood sugar is going to increase. Adrenaline is such a powerful hormone that it can tell our liver to actually produce more blood sugar so that if we do have to be running for miles at a time from a threat, we have enough energy in our cells to be able to do that. And then it also is going to increase a lot of pro-inflammatory molecules, which in the short term is very good and beneficial. It helps our body be able to respond to the stress. So, of course, the human body is really designed to be able to deal with these stressors, but they should really only last a short period of time. We should be able to turn on that sympathetic nervous system, get out of a danger, and then go right back to baseline with that parasympathetic nervous system, that rest and digest, going back into action. However,
that's not what happens for most of us, is it?
That's not what happens. No, because we're not living like we used to, where a threat is really quick. You always hear that analogy when people are talking about stress, where, our ancestors would have to run from a lion. And I just get so sick of that analogy. So I'm like, that can't possibly have been the only stressor our ancestors ever faced. But, it is that really quick response. But in our modern lives, we are constantly stressed about family, money, jobs. And so the stressors don't go away. So what happens after that quick adrenaline release is the stressor isn't gone, but adrenaline lasts for such a long time that the hypothalamus and the pituitary gland in the brain are still sending chemical signals to the body that we are under threat. So then the adrenal glands start releasing, like you said, cortisol. And cortisol is very similar to adrenaline. It has those same actions where it increases our heart rate, our blood sugar, inflammatory molecules, but it can stick around for a long time. And then we start seeing chronic cortisol throughout the body. And over time, this is really, really going to affect heart health. Studies have shown time and time again that people who are under chronic stress suffer from, a lot more inflammation, high blood sugar, high blood pressure, high blood triglyceride levels, all of those being factors
And
for
heart
chronic
issues.
heart chronic heart disease, chronic heart
That's right.
conditions of any kind. And a lot of it is because of all of the chemical messages that our body is getting to increase all of the blood sugar and triglycerides and blood pressure and stuff like that. So really important that we start managing stress and
Yes,
the way our
stress.
body can respond.
Exactly. So what kind of things can we do to start managing that?
A really good question. A lot of it is, we can't get rid of all stress in our lives for sure.
No,
That's
no.
absolutely never going to happen. So it's really kind of focusing on the other end of the stress with how our body is responding to those things, making sure we're giving our bodies the nutrients that it needs to really help
Keep up with
combat
that
the
demand.
actions of, yeah, exactly. And especially when it comes to things like inflammation, because I would say the biggest problem that chronic cortisol release is going to cause is just so much inflammation,
That's right.
pro-inflammatory molecules in the body that just leave our body in a state of chronic inflammation. And so, coming from a background of working with Nordic naturals and really understanding how inflammation affects us, I would say omega-3 fatty acids are probably one of the most powerful ways to really make sure that we're balancing out that stress and inflammatory response.
That's right. I mean, and with
So,
all that inflammation comes the fatigue, comes the mood swings, the anxiety, the sleep issues. All those things can start to
mhm.
come as, like you said, as the longer this goes on, the
Yeah.
more inflammation and things that we deal with. And so we're all told to take fish oils. I mean, everybody
Yeah.
says take your fish oil. You know, it's one of the top 5 products you should be taking every single day. But
Hmm.
why? What is fish oil really doing in helping aid our body for our heart health and our stress and inflammation response?
Such a good question. I love this question. So, fish oil is a fatty acid. It's a fat just like any other fat that we get in the diet. So, technically, it is just one of the three macronutrients that we consume. There's fat, carbohydrates, and protein. There's two essential fatty acids, omega-6 and omega-3. Of course, the omega-3 is what we find in fish and fish oil. And the reason they're considered essential is because our cells depend on them for daily cellular functions, operations, but we can't make them in our body, so they have to be consumed through the diet or through supplementation. One of the reasons these two fats are so critical for the body is that they actually turn into molecules within our cells, whether it's a brain cell, a heart cell, a muscle cell. They turn into powerful signaling molecules that either turn inflammation on, in the case of omega 6, or turn inflammation off. So,
Mhm.
omega 6s, which we just don't really care so much about, not because they're not important, but because we get so many of them from our diet,
Diet.
they are
Mhm.
actually pro inflammatory. They're going to turn inflammation on in your cell. A lot of that is going to be activated after the stress response. Your cells are going to release those omega 6 fatty acids from the cell membrane, convert them into molecules that keep inflammation elevated. Omega 3s, on the other hand, and when a lot of people hear from their doctor, you should be taking omega 3, or from their cardiologist, you should be taking omega 3, they think that fish oil is anti inflammatory. And they're not wrong. It does have a huge influence on inflammation and modulating it, but they're much more inflammation regulators or inflammation resolvers is really how we talk about them. Because what omega 3s are doing is they're allowing for this healthy rise in the inflammatory process so that our bodies can respond to any cellular damage or any stress. But then the omega 3s are kind of coming in and resolving that stress fully so our cells can go back to baseline and maintain full health again. So, omega 3s, when we're getting adequate amounts, they're going to be converted in our cell membranes into really powerful molecules called pro-resolving mediators that do just what they sound like. They resolve inflammation fully. Without adequate omega 3s and without the ability to make these pro-resolving mediators, inflammation just stays high. So that's one of the reasons why fish oil is so critical for heart health, because there's so many places throughout the cardiovascular system, whether it's throughout the arteries, the veins, blood vessels, the heart muscle itself, where if inflammation is not being resolved, again, we're going to start seeing a lot of contribution to those heart health risk factors that we talk about a lot. So fish oil is actually within the heart in response to stress. It's going to do things like really support platelet activity to help, combat too much blood clotting. It's really going to help to reduce blood triglyceride levels, really going to help to reduce blood pressure. And we have so many randomized clinical controlled trials, so many meta-analyses that really demonstrate the power of fish oil when it comes to things like lowering triglycerides, lowering blood pressure, and just lowering overall inflammation in general so that blood can flow. So
I want to back up for just a second, Kira. You talked about we get too much omega-6 in our diet. So what are we eating a lot of that has too many of these pro-inflammatory type omega-6s?
Yeah, another good question. So many good questions. Everything that we eat in our standard American diet pretty much has an omega-6 oil of some kind. Omega-6s are found abundantly in all of the seed oils that we use to cook and process our food. Corn oil, soybean oil. Our consumption of soybean oil has increased 1,000 times since 1909. We basically drink this stuff in our Western industrial diet. So anytime you eat out at a restaurant, even if you're ordering a salad, the salad dressing is usually soybean oil or corn oil or canola oil. Anytime you buy anything, even if it's in a health food store, if it's been processed in any way, you'll usually find sunflower oil on the label. So aside from those industrial seed oils, also nuts, grains, and seeds, almonds, pistachios, walnuts, cashews, all very high in omega-6 fatty acids, and a lot of the animal products that we eat now, because we put animals in confined animal feeding operations. Instead of them eating their natural diet, they're getting fed a diet of corn and soy. So they have a lot of omega-6s concentrating in their tissues. Then when we eat their eggs, their dairy, their meat, we're getting omega-6s from that as well.
That's right.
So we are not deficient in omega-6. We do not need to supplement with them. And in a lot of cases, we're getting way too many to the point that we are really, really inflamed because of it.
So this would be your case for why fish oil is sometimes usually a lot better choice over flax oil or something as well, because you don't need that extra omega-6 in the diet.
Yep, exactly. There is a little bit of omega-6 in flax oil, but flax oil is more of a omega-3, but it's different than the EPA and DHA that's found in fish. So we can dive into that if you want. But
sure. No, where I want to go with it, though, is I hear this a lot. It's like, okay, Bryan, I eat lots of fish through the week. Am I getting enough essential fatty acids that I need from omega-3 sources? How would you respond to that?
I would respond the same way I respond to almost every question in nutrition, which is it depends. Yes. It depends so much on the type of fish you're eating, where that fish is coming from. A lot of fish that people consume nowadays, unfortunately, is farm raised, where that fish is actually being fed corn and soy. So the fish isn't even eating a natural diet if it's coming from a farm raised source. And a lot of the fish that we do consume, like tilapia, cod, a lot of those white fish that a lot of people get for protein, they don't actually have a lot of omega-3s. So we really have to be turning to the cold water fatty, high quality fish like salmon, that a lot of people just aren't eating a whole lot of. And, I think there's also a common misconception that shellfish and shrimp and lobster and stuff like that's going to have omega-3s, but they really don't. So it's pretty unlikely that somebody would be getting a lot of omega-3s.
Getting enough, especially in today's standards. Like you said, we're all eating the standard American diet. We all have so much inflammation going on just because of that alone, plus the stress factors and everything else that go with that. So you're right. We can always use extra omega-3s. So why Nordic Naturals then? Why are we choosing Nordic Naturals over everybody else? Why is your company my number one selling fish oil and has been for the last 10 years?
Yeah, Nordic Naturals is just so fantastic. We're actually the number one selling brand of fish oil in the country. So your store is not unique in that. There's several big reasons for sure. The first thing to think about is when we're talking about polyunsaturated fatty acids, whether it's omega-6s or omega-3s, the molecular structure of these fats is different. That's something like a saturated fat, like a butter or lard, or something that's solid at room temperature. We know that fish oil is liquid at room temperature. That's because it has a very different molecular structure. One of the reasons is because of all these double bonds that are incorporated into the carbon chain of that fat. Fats are basically just long chains of carbon and hydrogen molecules. And so these double bonds give the fats a lot of really important qualities once incorporated into our bodies. But because of it, they're pretty unstable molecules, meaning they're incredibly fragile. They're incredibly prone to becoming oxidized and rancid if they're exposed to excessive oxygen, excessive light. And what happens if you're taking a poor quality fish oil, an oxidized or a rancid fish oil, if it hasn't been, taken care of through all of manufacturing, is you're going to take it and then you're going to get an awful fish burp or some sort of, negative experience or taste that comes with that oil. And I'm sure so many people have experienced that. Yeah, so many people are like, I can't take fish oil because I burp it up. And
that's right.
And it's really unfortunate because they never go back to taking it again. So at Nordic Naturals, we go to extreme lengths through every single step of our manufacturing process to make sure that our oils are never exposed to excessive heat, excessive light, excessive oxygen, and they stay incredibly fresh. We actually manufacture in a completely oxygen-free with a completely oxygen-free environment. So all of our manufacturing equipment is nitrogen blanketed. This keeps oxygen out. This keeps our oil incredibly fresh. And that's why we can guarantee that our consumers will never experience that awful fish burp that's so dreaded. And then, of course, that's going to really offer a lot of benefits to their health because they're taking a very fresh, pure fish oil. We're also completely sustainably sourced. So all of the fish that we source from the oceans are certified sustainable by Friend of the Sea. Friend of the Sea is a nonprofit, very large worldwide organization that certifies fisheries and fishing vessels for sustainability specifically. So we can just be absolutely certain we're not draining the ocean's populations of fish. We're not, hurting any endangered species, nothing like that. So that's really important as well. So it's really just about quality. At Nordic Naturals, we never cut any corners. We're still family owned and operated. We'll do what's right at any cost when it comes to the quality of our products and doing what's right for the environment. So,
Nordic Naturals also always promotes their fish oil being in a triglyceride form. What does that really mean to the consumer?
Really, yeah, this is a confusing, point of conversation for a lot of people because they just heard me say fish oil can reduce your triglycerides. And then they see that they're taking a triglyceride form fish oil. So it's very confusing. The most important thing to remember is that a triglyceride is just the scientific name for fat, the way that fat is found in nature. So in nature, in our bodies, in the food we eat, fat is found in what's called the triglyceride form. And basically all that is 3 fatty acids bound to a glycerol backbone. You have 3 fatty acids, glycerol backbone. And this is just the natural form of fat. What happens when fish oil companies want to concentrate their fish oil is they have to take apart this triglyceride molecule so that they can work with the individual fatty acids, let's say EPA and DHA, so that they can concentrate them. So basically you're taking apart that molecule and liberating the EPA and DHA, concentrating them. So you can get a high dose fish oil. You can get a full 1,000 milligrams or 2,000 milligrams per serving. Most companies are going to keep then that EPA and DHA omega-3 fish oil in that intermediary form, which is called an ethyl ester. The problem is that our bodies don't really recognize what ethyl ester form fat is. It's hard for our cells to incorporate them into our bodies. So at Nordic Naturals, we take that concentrated high quality fish oil and we put it back onto its glycerol backbone to remake that triglyceride. So you're getting a high quality, high potency fish oil at a high dose, but you're still getting it in the natural form that the body is meant to utilize and absorb fat in. Our bodies are so efficient at absorbing triglycerides. So I know it's very counterintuitive. You can take triglyceride fish oil to lower your triglycerides, but that is just the way it works because fish oil is just so good at lowering triglycerides. So,
well, I think that's important to reiterate. You're in the natural form, so your body can absorb it so much more efficiently. That's really what's making Nordic stand out is that you're doing more of that natural, nature-based type form of fat that your body can uptake and really create a difference when it comes to your heart health, especially, right?
Yep, absolutely.
And of course, heart health is not complete unless we talk a little bit about CoQ10.
That's true.
I see that Nordic Naturals is now adding CoQ10 to some of their fish oil products, which is great. So explain why
Yes.
CoQ10 was added to the fish oil.
Yeah, a lot of your customers probably know of CoQ10 as being supportive for heart health. CoQ10 is an incredibly interesting molecule. It's one of my favorite molecules, being
Yes.
such the science nerd that I am. CoQ10 is very, very similar to a vitamin, especially like a B vitamin, any of the vitamins that help our cells get energy. The reason CoQ10 is not considered a vitamin is because technically, in nutritional science terms, it's not essential, meaning our cells in our bodies can make CoQ10 from precursors. But a lot of times that process is very inefficient, especially as we age, or especially if somebody's on a prescription medication like a statin drug, the body's not going to make CoQ10. So CoQ10 is really important in every single cell of the body that requires a lot of energy. Energy, our body's energy currency is what's called ATP. So of course, if we're thinking about the heart muscle, the heart is part of the autonomic nervous system. It works so hard every single day. It never stops beating. It never takes a break. And it requires an enormous amount of ATP or energy to keep our heart going. Well, the cells within our heart cannot make ATP without CoQ10. CoQ10 is that really important final cofactor in this, what we call the electron transport chain, that keeps energy production going in the cell. So not only is CoQ10 contributing to just energy production throughout the entire heart, but it also acts as a very, very powerful antioxidant to protect our hearts and our arteries from oxidative stress, oxidative damage, and ultimately inflammation. So CoQ10 is a fat-soluble nutrient. A lot of vitamins in the body, a lot of compounds in the body are either water-soluble or fat-soluble. Of course, the fat-soluble nutrients, whether it's vitamin D, CoQ10, beta-carotene, whatever it might be, all of these nutrients are better absorbed when taken with a source of fat. And what better fat to take them with than omega-3 fish oil?
Yeah, that's right.
So we have started adding CoQ10 into an Ultimate Omega, and then we have some standalone CoQ10 products as well to really give the heart that additional support it needs to continue with energy production and antioxidant support. And just as a quick aside, I know we're talking about the heart today, but CoQ10 is also incredibly important in the brain as well. Of course, the brain is another organ that uses an enormous amount of energy, an enormous amount of ATP. So that CoQ10 is going to cross the blood-brain barrier, help protect the brain from oxidative damage, and also help those neurons keep up with energy production.
Yeah, there's so much great research coming out on CoQ10 and how important it is for our heart health. And I always find it very odd that, this is for people listening that may be taking the statin medication. How many people still don't know, or maybe their doctor didn't tell them to do it, that when they're taking a statin medication, they must be taking CoQ10 with it, correct?
Yep. You must be, because the step that a statin drug is blocking to block cholesterol production is the same enzymatic pathway that's making CoQ10 in the cell. So if you're blocking them both, you're blocking production of cholesterol. Yes, the drug's doing exactly what it's supposed to do, but it's also blocking production of CoQ10. That's why a lot of times the side effects of a statin drug is muscle weakness, exhaustion, because your cells literally cannot make the energy that they need to make.
Exactly right. So, and most of the studies I've read, and correct me if I'm wrong, Kira, but I see about 100 milligrams a day at least is sufficient to take, especially if you're taking a statin medication. Would you agree with that?
Yes.
Yeah.
100
I've
milligrams.
seen studies all the way up to 400-600 milligrams easily, but for 100 milligrams is about the average dose most people need. And I see that's what you're adding into your fish oil product too as well.
Yep. And that's exactly why our science advisory board is very, very good at following all the updated research and formulating products according to, what the amount is that's going to help to.
And the lab testing that Nordic does is incredible too. And I just noticed on some of the new packaging coming in, y'all are putting the QR code to the lab testing of your fish oil.
Yep, exactly. Every single batch of product that leaves our doors, third-party tested by an outside independent laboratory. They test for heavy metals, environmental toxins, freshness, oxidation, purity. And this is every product, not just our fish oil. But yeah, you can pull up the QR code from your product it'll take you right to our website, and it'll actually pull up the specific certificate of analysis for that product.
I think
And so
that's
that's
great.
another thing. Yeah. And a lot of supplement companies aren't going to provide a certificate of analysis from an outside laboratory. And that
Right.
really is so important for anybody shopping for supplements in general, really just making sure that you're getting what you're paying for.
Exactly. And I always tell my clients, I was like, I know, especially in today's economy, we're all about trying to save money, right? But I always
Yes,
say fish oil is one place you don't want to save your money. You're gonna pay for what you really get. And
it's
so
so
that's why
true.
I'm so big on Nordic Naturals, because of all these things you've already spoke about, the quality, the top notch, the sourcing, lab testing, everything that Nordic is doing to make a good quality supplement where it definitely minimizes burping and issues that most people experience on that. So that's why it's my go-to source for sure. Nordic Naturals
That's
has been
great.
number one out there for a long time.
I love
Kira,
hearing
you're a
that. Yeah,
wealth of
thank you.
information. I so appreciate you
Thank
being here
you.
today and helping us enlighten on things we can do with our heart health. I think CoQ10 and omega-3s are so important for our heart, and so much more that we didn't get into today. But I do
Yeah,
appreciate the information you brought to the table today.
absolutely. I really appreciate you having me, and thank you for all the work you're doing out there too to help keep your communities healthy and spread the word. So very, very appreciated.
Thanks so much, Kira.
Yeah, thank you. Talk to you later.
I hope you enjoyed this episode of the Healthy Approach podcast. Be sure to subscribe if you like this podcast, and help us spread the word by rating and sharing with your friends and family. If you'd like to learn more about Nordic Natural products, go to sunflowershoppe.com. That's shop with 2 P's and an E, or visit us at one of our 2 locations in the Dallas-Fort Worth area.